Hi, I'm Pharaoh, and this is part 4 of my Corvettes for Beginners series. So far, I've discussed building a Corvette very early on in a save. Then I moved on to refiners and storage, before more recently focusing in on how we can use the Corvettes to scan for things on planets, useful things, valuable things. In this video, I want to go back to storage because there's a little bit more to be said there. And then I want to touch on the nutrition unit, which is another item that we can build on our Corvettes. Again, I want to focus in on how we might use that early game, because the focus of all of these videos has been getting a Corvette very, very early on in a save, like within the first couple of systems, and building it from there and how that can change the game. So let's start with the storage container. Now, one of the things I mentioned is they can look different in different habitation units. This is what it looks like, for instance, in the Ambassador Habs. And I think this is the Titan Hab. I can't remember, but this is what it looks like in this Hab. So they can look very different depending on the room. Now, the thing to take notice of here is I've got 2 here, and that gives us access to more slots than just 1, obviously. But even if you don't really have a lot of room, for instance, we're running out of room here. If we wanted to put another one, we've probably, no, we've completely run out. We could put it where this window is, but we'd have to get rid of the window. And we haven't got anywhere else. We could, actually, no, we could put it here. If we wanted to put another one down, we could just put it here on the opposite side to this one. But we can't put it here because there's a door here and it would block the door. But we don't actually need all of the space in order to access all of our containers. For instance, if we delete this one, we can build any one of these in its place. I think that one was number 9. Let's build that here. And there's the thing that we left in it, the 1 pure ferrite, just to so we can recognize it. Now you can see also we can name them. So let's name this one odds, for instance. And we might have a container where we just put odd things we're not sure what they are. So we've now called it odds, and we can see number 9 odds. So we know which one to build if we wanted to come back to that one. Because what we can do is delete that and then build, say, for instance, number 1, number 2, number 3, any of the others. And obviously, each time we delete it, we get back the resources. So we can delete and rebuild whichever one we want. So number 1, it's called main backup. And number 0 is the main storage, which we've got round the corner. So in the main backup, I've just got a few pieces that I couldn't fit in number 1. But if, for instance, I wanted something I knew I'd left in odds, then I can go back to number 9, and it's labeled conveniently, and I could build that instead. So we have access to 500 slots, and the only thing we need is a Corvette, obviously, and 3 metal plating and 1 microprocessor, and we can access 500 new slots relatively easy, with a nice little labeling system. So we know, for instance, we could put in number 8 we might put plants. In number 7 we might put some modules that we haven't made use of yet. In number 6 we might put crafting items, etc., etc. And we could label them as we go along, and we'll always know where we can find them, which one we need to build in order to get to them. So I have my main storage here, and then I have a different storage container that I can delete and rebuild at any stage. But you wouldn't even need to have 2. You could just have 1 and do that with it. Now, one quick note, depending on what settings you have, for instance, if we go to options and go to difficulty, in normal, which we're in at the moment, we have inventory stack limits as standard. But when we actually choose them, we can't choose them now because once you've set your inventory stack limit, it stays that way. But depending on which kind of setting you choose when you first start your save, you actually get different stack sizes for different things. For instance, you might get a different number of things you can store in your exosuit than you can store in your starship. And again, you can store more things in each slot in your storage container. So if you're playing at a higher difficulty, this is a really good way of having more convenient storage that you can store more things in. So that's storage containers. I think that's one of the biggest quality of life reasons to get a Corvette in the first place. If nothing else, then storage containers are something that are definitely worth getting. Now, something that you may not be as bothered about, but later on in the game, I would say it's definitely worth it. In fact, I actually think it's pretty much worth it quite early in the game, but it really depends if you like the system or not, is the nutrient processor. Again, this will look different depending on where you build it. So let's just delete that and demonstrate. And you can see this looks very different. It's actually quite a cool little look in this particular type of hab. I think this is the Titan hab. So let's have a look at a nutrient processor in more detail. For a start, we have a recipe catalog. Now, currently, this does seem to be a bit buggy. We should be able to just put something in here, say, for instance, Fecium. And then the wild yeast should be in our recipe catalog. If we look at our recipe catalog, currently, I don't see it in there. So you might get this as well. I don't know how common this bug is. If I take that out and I reload, let me just reload my game and I'll come back. So I'm back in the game. Let's have a quick look and see if that's actually refreshed. Yes, it has. So in theory, you don't have to make the item. You just have to put it in there, just like I did then. So maybe if I put more dye in, we get the recipe for meat flakes, and that will populate our recipe catalog at a later date. Now, the other thing is we've actually got storage, and we can store things like Fecium and Mordite and rancid flesh, and we've got some flour here, and we've got some creature pellets here. We can even store things like carbon. You'll see what is available, which is whatever is lit up. I wouldn't personally put carbon there, but you can put things like plants in here as well. So it can be a useful themed inventory space. Now, there are a couple of different reasons why we might want to use the nutrient processor. I mean, for example, as we saw already, we can make creature pellets in it. And there are some recipes that allow us to make creature pellets a little bit more efficiently than just crafting them. So if we were to put 200 carbon into our nutrient processor, then we would get 200 creature pellets. So that might be something you might want to do just so that you're doing it in a hands-off way. If we were to craft it, then it's going to take 60 carbon to make 5. So it's more efficient to build it with carbon in nutrient processor. Now, there are some even more efficient recipes. I'll leave that up to you to find them. But as you can see, there's already a reason to have a nutrient processor, even if it's a minor one. Depends if you're really into taming pets or farming creatures. Now, let's pop into the anomaly a second, and I'll show you one reason why we might be interested in cooking things. Now, tucked at the back of the anomaly is Kronos. So you can see it's on this right-hand side as you look from your ship, or left-hand side as we look out here. And we have two things. We have the grill, which is exactly the same. It's a nutrient processor. We can access our recipes, and we can access our ingredient storage in exactly the same way. Quite convenient, actually. And even if you don't have a nutrient processor on your Corvette, or you don't have one that you carry around with you, you can store stuff in here. So early on in a save, it might be handy to just put things that you're not going to use straight away, like cooking ingredients, in here and just squirrel them away for a rainy day. Now, the other thing we can do, with Kronos is we can hand him things, and it will show the things that we have handy to us. Now we have meaty chunks and we have carbon nanotubes. Let's put some of the other things in, so we've got actually a bit of variation. Let's see what it actually gives us now. So we've got some rancid flesh. Now I know for a fact that if we make rancid flesh into something, we can actually turn that into something that's a little bit nicer for him. So let's do that. Let's make 14 purge ribs. As you can see, it takes a little while. So now I have 14 purge ribs. I put them in my exosuit. And it's the last thing I put in my exosuit. So it should now be listed. And there it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed him those ribs. But unfortunately, it's going to take a while because there are 14 of them. And we can only give them to him one at a time. But each one we give him, we get some nanites. As you can see, we've got 50 nanites for that one. So let me give them all of these, and then we'll come back and see what we've got. Before I hand off all of these, I just want to make a note. It says here, nutrient system will restore 5% health for purge ribs. So that is worth noting that some foods will give you different things. For instance, this will give me 25% life support for refined flour. So different foods will actually give you different things if you eat them. So if we were to hit X here, or if we were on the keyboard, if we were to hit E for consume, we would get 20% of our life support back. So if we were running around on a planet and we didn't have many resources, then eating things can help. Or if we've been damaged by something, eating things can help. Health specifically, the core health, which if we look at the top left-hand side, those little pluses, they're actually quite hard to get back. So eating meat can restore those. So that is worth knowing, that food can do these little things that you might not know they do. I'm going to continue feeding Kronos my ribs. Okay, I've now finished giving him all of those 14 ribs. I've got 9,655 nanites. So I've actually made a profit of 569 nanites. Now that's not an awful lot. And it did take a while to feed him all of those. And it is a little bit tedious. But there are more profitable food items than that. Now, if you've got a large stack of something you want to give to him, and you do find it as tedious as I do, then one thing you could potentially do is just every time you pop the anomaly, just give him 5 or 10 or whatever. And you can always store it in the grill. So it's not as if you have to carry it around with you. You can just put it away and come and get it whenever you need it and give him a few. 500 odd nanites every time you visit the anomaly is actually quite a good thing. The other thing is worth knowing from Kronos is that you can donate food to the market. And he asks for very specific things, and he asks for different things every day, and this will refresh each day. And at the moment, the simplest thing he's looking for is pastry. And I know we can make pastry quite simply. And I'll just show you that as an example of how we can use Kronos to get nanites. So we're going to need to make pastry. And the first thing we're going to need for pastry is some heptaloid wheat. Now, I happen to already have some heptaloid wheat, which I picked up as I was running around a planet. And I turned that into refined flour. But let me show you how we find that. Now, I happen to know that heptaloid wheat is always available on planets that have star bulb. We have a verdant planet here that has star bulb, but I know for a fact that that's quite an awkward planet because, look, it says it's got activated copper. That means it's got storms. It also happens to have very high mountains. So we're going to go to this planet, and this is in Shovsky. So I'm now going to teleport back to that system. So if we're on foot, we can usually scan around and spot plants, impulse beans, pulpy roots. I'm just going to quickly grab these impulse beans, because as we were saying, certain things can be eaten. And you'll notice that impulse beans give us 5% life support. So again, they can be handy very early game. So let's see if we can find some heptaloid wheat. We can usually find them on these planets. Let's go as slow as possible. You'll notice that it always goes a little bit faster than you think. There was some. It's going a little bit faster, and I'm not going to mark that. I'll just see if I can spot some more in front of me. So that's star bramble. That's star bramble. A nice point of interest there. Impulse beans. So I've actually ended up resorting to just running around on planets finding these, because they just seem to be very tricky to spot on this planet. So let's see, I should have more than 25 now. Yeah, 32, that'll do for now. So nutrient refining. 32 of them. We can add that to the few we have already, which conveniently makes a nice round 50. Now we need somewhere where we can get some milk. Let's see if this is the right type of planet for that. No, we only have flying creatures here. Right, we can at least find some milk from this guy. And that guy. The kind of mammalian creatures. Yes, even from him. And him. This looks quite promising. So we'll go to mechs in next. Now, if you're really into cooking, there are semi-automatic ways of milking creatures. But we'll just do it manually here. So that I've got enough creature pellets, I'm going to make 200. So we can access any mammalian creature and we can collect milk from them. And we usually collect them in 1s, 2s and 3s, depending on how big the creature is. Only got one from this guy. He will give us more milk in a minute, but we can maybe try and get those couple over there. We go to here, we can actually throw them on the ground. $49. I think that's 50. So we can turn milk into cream. And that's going to take a couple of minutes. Now later on, if you're doing this at an industrial scale, you can have multiple nutrient processors in a base. You don't have to have them in a Corvette. There's a different type for a base, and you can also have them on your freighter. The ones in the base use a nutrient process you carry around with you in your exosuit, so you can access nutrient processors anywhere. Obviously, I don't have to stand here waiting for this. I could just go and do other things. Now I can turn cream into butter. Again, I need to make another couple of minutes. So now I'm going to combine my flour and my butter to make 50 pastry. And again, it's going to take a couple of minutes. So while that's doing that, we'll go back into space and we'll call up the anomaly. So I'm in the anomaly now and it's still running. So as you can see, this can be quite an involved process. It can take a little bit of time. Ideally, what you would do is you would build up a lot of your basic ingredients over time and keep them in your nutrient processor, and then you'd have access to them when you checked Chronos. So we now have 50 pastry. It only actually wants 30. And that's netted us 1,500 nanites. So as you can see, this is a little bit more profitable than just kind of piecemeal doing these things by giving him certain foods one at a time, although it did take a little while. The most efficient way of doing this is to use frost crystal, which brings us to another piece of technology, the living wall. So in order to farm frost crystals, we're going to need to come to the Exosuit Research Station, Selene here. And we specifically will need the Hazmat Gauntlet. That costs 80 nanites, so it's not too expensive. Now, while we're here, I'm also going to pop into the Construction Research Terminal. And I'm going to go to the growing section, the agricultural modules. And you need to have already bought the hydroponic bay, which I think is about 5 salvage data. And then you can get the frostwork for 3. So that we can actually grow them as well. We can build a living wall here. And it needs 30 silver, 10 silicate powder and 10 carbon. So all things that we know how to get. And you can actually build the frostwork in here, and you just need 50 frost crystal and 25 dioxide. Now, I've done some things a little bit out of order here, so I've already got the frost crystal, but I'm going to go back in time slightly to when I didn't have it. So we're looking for frozen worlds, and we have one here in Mexin, and what we're looking for is frost crystal. There's some frostwork there. So for the particular recipe we were using, we needed 50. And I'm pretty sure we will get 50 reasonably quickly here. Yep, we've already got 29 from that. We now have 55. So in the nutrient processor, however many we put in here, we can make into glass grains. But we don't really need that much. We're only really needing 50. And I've already made some, so I'm cheating a little bit, but here's some we made earlier. We'll put 50 glass grains in there, and we can make 50 refined flour. And so as you can see, this is a lot more efficient than looking for heptaloid wheat if you've got the Hazmat Gauntlet and we know how to find those particular ingredients. So now we have some extra frost crystal, we can plant some. And that will take a certain length of time. You can actually find out how long by scanning it. It'll take about an hour. It's one of the fastest things that grows. And every time we harvest, we can bring it round to the nutrient processor, make our glass grains, and then refine it into flour. So as you can see, cooking is a pretty big topic in and of itself. I've really just scratched the surface, and even then I feel like maybe I over-elaborated on that. A lot of people just see it as a completely unnecessary part of the game. It is a reasonably good way of getting nanites, and it is available to us with a Corvette. And also earlier on we were talking about storage. And again, that's a huge quality of life improvement, that we can access all of our storage right up front. In the game, usually you would access one storage container during the tutorial. And then if you progress the tutorial quite aggressively, like the base building things, then you would get to the point where you would get all of the rest of them. But that does take a little while, and you might be focusing on other things. And for many people, you only really gain access to all of your storage when you get a freighter, which is a few hours into the game. Whereas a Corvette can be obtained really quickly. You can get that, as we've demonstrated in this series, immediately upon getting to the anomaly. Especially if you don't want to do a second save and go through everything, then you can kind of fast track a lot of the things, and you don't have to go through a lot of the tutorials to gain access to many of the game loops that you're familiar with already. There's one more thing that we haven't touched on in the Corvette, which is the mission board. Now, that's not a huge topic in and of itself, but there are a couple of little intricacies that you may not be aware of. So I'll cover that last and maybe just recap everything just so that we understand the overall benefits of a Corvette. But until then, I've been Pharaoh. Travel well and goodbye for now.